So I'm wearing my Ducks hat, and I'm wearing blues again today because blues. This is the ugly with the red. But I like it. The fact that I like this jersey means I like it. So I said the other day this is going to happen. This is happening. So I'm going to do it because I know everyone wants to know who are the big winners and losers coming out of the trade deadline. So here, oh, sorry, Shadow, I didn't see you there. Here are my winners. And I don't mean today, I mean overall. Minnesota. Okay, wait. Let me do this right. Okay, let's drop down. There you go, Shadow. Now you're a star. All right, you're a star. Act like it. Okay, if I was going to name winners at the trade deadline, so these are teams that I think won at the trade deadline. Here, get down here. I think Florida did well, picking up Vanek. I think the Capitals knocked it out of the park getting Shattenkirk. I think the Canucks were smart in getting younger. I think the Senators were smart in picking up depth. The Penguins helped their injured blue line by getting some stopgap guys who are going to be pretty good. I like what the Kings did. I like that the Oilers, whether I like Darnay or not, the Oilers tried. They tried to increase their blue line depth, or their forward depth. Minnesota, big fan of what Minnesota did with the Hansel move. And the Preds with Parento, that's an under the radar, picking up some depth. The Blackhawks are another one, picking up Oduya. And Yurko could still turn out to be a steal for them. And the Leafs. I like Boyle. I like Fair. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I like what 11 teams did at the deadline. Now, teams that I'm baffled by or upset by at the deadline. I don't think the Bruins did enough. I don't think the Wings committed to selling fully, and they needed to. The Blues, big minus for Shattenkirk. I don't know what they're thinking there because they didn't get anything of value back. The Jets, there just wasn't any movement by the Jets other than the Stafford move, which doesn't change the big picture. Colorado, they've got to pick up draft picks or do something to fix what's wrong in Colorado. The Islanders, I don't think the market was there. Arizona's got Shane Doan, who's pissed off. That can't help. So, all right, losers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But here's the problem. You can't call any of these teams winners or losers yet. Because, yeah, Ottawa sacrificed some of the future. Guess what? Ottawa's still got all of their top prospects in their system. They didn't trade any of their top prospects. They didn't trade White. That was the big one. Patrick White. Oh, people want Shabbat. They didn't trade either of those guys. And I like what these teams have done. I like that certain teams. Oh, and the Sharks by picking up Hansen. That's just smart. And here's where I'm leading with this. This is my board. Notice I'm very generous with the winning, and the losing I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe they're losers because they didn't do enough, but I'm not blaming anybody other than perhaps Joe Sakic because he should have been making moves in January. Honestly, he should have looked in January and said this team's not good enough, and he should have been making moves starting in January to fix what's wrong in Colorado. And Detroit is simply having an issue replacing their past core with a new core that's good enough. Sheehan didn't move at the deadline because the Maple Leafs picked up Boyle. Detroit, I don't know what they wanted for Sheehan, but they should have taken whatever was offered by Toronto because Toronto gets the better player in Boyle, and now the Red Wings are stuck with Sheehan. So there you go. There's my summary of the deadline. I got maybe 2 lines into the summary here by Ken Campbell on Hockey News. And he starts with, only one team's going to lift the Stanley Cup on a sultry night in June, so really there's only one winner and 29 losers at the deadline. Well, 30 if you include Vegas Golden Knights. Actually, there were 31 losers, the last of which was a group of people who booked a vacation day to watch this exercise in ennui. I said before the deadline that it was going to be a slow day. I said it. And then when a bunch of trades happened a few days before, people were like, oh, see, this is going to set the table. And it's like, no, those are the moves. Number one winner, Ken Campbell's article now. Washington Capitals. Capitals were already leading contender to win the Stanley Cup before the deadline, solidified themselves in that department by getting the crown jewel of the proceedings. Getting Shattenkirk from St. Louis not only bolstered their defensive core, kept them out of the greedy hands of the Rangers and the Penguins, as I stated during my live stream. Who undoubtedly would have been in the running for him, and I'm sure they were. Capitals are counting on winning the Stanley Cup, which would make the first-round pick going to St. Louis 31st overall. That used to be a second-rounder. I have no problem at this point. But then he says number one loser, Ottawa Senators. Look, we like depth just as much as the next guy, but that's all it is, depth. Adding Burrows and Stallberg to your lineup is not exactly tilting the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. The Senators gave up what could turn out to be an excellent long-term project in Jonathan Dahlen to get Burrows, then signed Burrows to a 2-year extension. Head scratch. But the real error, in this writer's opinion, was dealing Curtis Lazar, who will flourish in Calgary after almost being ruined by the Senators. I'm not sure Ottawa almost ruined Lazar. When a guy can't score in half of the season, yes, the team he's playing for probably plays a role in that. But you make your opportunities. I have watched plenty of players, and it's funny because Burrows is one of the ones going to Ottawa. He made his opportunity in Vancouver. He made the most out of not getting very much ice time and impressed the coach and got more ice time. I'm not saying Lazar won't flourish in Calgary. I'm saying that if he does, that doesn't mean that Ottawa is a loser, because Ottawa has a lot of prospects coming up. They have a lot of young guys in this organization who are on their way up. So Lazar was expendable. Number 2 winner, Vancouver Canucks. Canucks GM Jim Benning, not his brother, no. Came to the realization his attempt to retool the Canucks on the fly was a flawed strategy and went all out to add depth to the franchise prospect list. I wouldn't say trading Hansen and Burrows is all out, but okay. As we've already mentioned, getting Dahlen might be one of those deals that pays off in 4 or 5 years, and dealing Jannik Hansen's expiring contract and getting a 2014 first-rounder and point-per-game player in the AHL and Nikolai Godolbin gives the Canucks another bump in the future skill department. I don't think he's exactly a point a game. He's close, though. I don't have a problem with this, but saying that Dahlen might be one of those things that pays off in 4 or 5 years. So Ottawa, who have prospects that are going to be ready in a year or two, are going to get raked over the coals for giving up a guy who the writer himself says could be 4 or 5 years away. Come on. Number 2 loser was St. Louis. The Blues had the undisputed best and most coveted player at the trade deadline, and they got a middling prospect, a career minor leaguer, a late first-round pick in this year's draft, and a second-rounder in 2 years. Not enough. Blues may have been better off rolling the dice keeping Shattenkirk for a playoff run. When you trade a player of Shattenkirk's potential impact, you have to at least get one sure thing in the deal. The Blues did not. I agree with that. I have no problem with that. Number 3 winner, Tampa Bay Lightning. There's a reason Steve Yzerman's so highly regarded in the hockey world, and his move at the deadline, particularly in the dying hours of the day, illustrated that perfectly. The Lightning have a glut of young players who are doing well, and that's creating a salary cap headache. Jonathan Drouin, Braden Point, and Andrei Vasilevsky will all earn bonuses this season that will put a serious strain on the Lightning salary cap, but the $1.7 million they're going to save this year means they can apply those bonuses to this season and not have them carry over to next season. And if there's any hope of re-signing Andre Palat, Tyler Johnson, and Drouin this summer, Yzerman needed to dump some serious salary, unloading an unproductive Valtteri Filppula and his $5 million contract or cap hit is a great start. No problem with that. None. Number 3 loser, Jarome Iginla. Iginla had a full no trade, which meant he could have held out for a team that had a better chance to win the Stanley Cup. But those teams never stepped forward, so he's on his way to Los Angeles, a team that hopes to buck the speed and skill trend by continuing to work the puck down low. Even though he only has 8 goals, Iginla gives the Kings a player who can find the back of the net. But does anyone seriously view this team as a serious cup contender? They have to make the playoffs first. Any team that's won the cup twice, yeah, I view them as dangerous. They have to make this move. And I don't think Iginla's a loser for going there. I think that's just overstating it. Winner number 4, Pittsburgh. It's easy to be a poker player when you have the most talent-laden team in the league, but you have to give Penguins GM Jim Rutherford a lot of kudos for showing some steely resolve. He kept Marc-Andre Fleury, and he will make a deal with Vegas to keep the Black Knights from taking Murray and picking up Mark Streit, Ron Hainsey, and Frank Corrado. He also bolstered the Penguins' blue line depth. I don't think Corrado plays. I have a funny feeling Corrado's not going to play for Pittsburgh. I think he gets waived. Loser number 4, Montreal Canadiens. If the playoffs were a heavyweight title fight, the smart money would be on the Canadiens, but a team that desperately needed some scoring depth went out and got bigger and slower and more defensive. I argued in my video that yes, Montreal needed more talent and they didn't get that, but they did solidify their bottom 6. They did. They added bottom 6 guys where they needed them. Many games this year I've watched Montreal and heard a guy's name and thought, wow, really? He's in the league? And that won't happen now. So I'm not going to qualify Montreal as a loser. They picked up what they needed. They needed some size and some sandpaper. It's not a matter of being slower either, because when it's your 4th line, even to some extent your 3rd line, it doesn't bite you that badly. As long as they're smart defensively and they're not likely to take penalties. And then he says Radim Verbata would have been nice. Verbata, I said the other night, Verbata's been overrated at this deadline badly because he's had all kinds of ice time with Arizona, so it's beefed up his stats a bit. Winner number 5, Minnesota Wild. Did the Wild overpay for Hansel and White? Hell yeah, they did. But the fact they were in position to do so is a testament to Wild GM Chuck Fletcher and his scouting staff. And then mentions the number of prospects that they have, and they have a lot of them. I don't know. I don't see why the Wild are the number 5 winner. Penguins are number 4. Like, it's weird to categorize them this way. And loser number 5, Edmonton Oilers. We're also as much for exercising caution at the deadline as the next guy, but when your team hasn't been in the playoffs since 2006, GM Peter Chiarelli was loath to accelerate the program, but the Connor McDavid Leon Draisaitl factor on this team screamed out for more than just adding David Desharnais. The Oilers could have used a big center or a stud defenseman. Both commodities were available at the deadline, but the Oilers stayed away. Really? Who was the big center or the stud defenseman that the Oilers could have got? I am not talking about the rumors. Who could they have got? The rumor was Shattenkirk wanted to go to an East Conference team, that he wanted to play on the East Coast. That was the rumor. Shattenkirk did not want to go to a West Coast team. So the Oilers, out of the question for Shattenkirk. The fact that he says a stud defenseman was available, where? And I said before the deadline, I don't see a stud defenseman moving. Now, you can argue that Streit is veteran. You can argue Hainsey's decent. You can argue that Shattenkirk's been fantastic, and he will be fantastic for the Capitals. But again, he didn't want to go to Edmonton. That was the rumor. And he didn't want to go to anywhere in Western Canada or Western States. He wanted to go to the East. I just find that such a weird statement to make. You know, more than just taking the Desharnais deal and just crapping on it. Before Desharnais played a game for Edmonton. The fact that Edmonton's in the playoffs for the first time since 2006 is exactly why you don't mess with that. To get a stud defenseman or top center, you have to trade future assets, you have to trade young prospects, and Edmonton is not in a position yet to start parting with top prospects and top draft picks. They're not at that stage. Neither is Toronto. That's why Toronto didn't do it either. They're both at that fragile stage where it's the first time in the running for the playoffs. Now, let's just say Edmonton went crazy and brought in Mark Streit, and they brought in Desharnais from Montreal, and they managed to bring in Vanek. Let's just say Vanek. And then let's just say that they made these picks available, and they traded them out, and then it just doesn't work. And the Oilers tank. And the Oilers end up out of the playoffs because these guys just don't mesh into the lineup, and it just creates this snowball effect, and then the players start second-guessing themselves. and they just fall right out of the playoffs. At the end of the season, the same writer on the same site is going to be saying, the Oilers screwed up again. Because for any team that I've seen bring guys in and it's brought a team together, I can point to a team that's brought a lot of guys in and it's failed miserably. Miserably. Rentals are not a guarantee of success in the playoffs. I love Shattenkirk, but he could easily in the first round of the playoffs blow it. Because it's the playoffs and things happen. Famously, Steve Smith puts the puck into his own net and the Calgary Flames knock out the Edmonton Oilers in 1986. Steve Smith was a fantastic defenseman. It was one of those brain fart moves. Now, if Smith made that brain fart move and was a rental for the Oilers, oh boy. So anyways, that's my opinion on winners and losers. That's the Hockey News opinion on winners and losers. Mine's a little more along the lines of, this could work. This may not. Let's find out what happens. But the fact that I'm saying I think Ottawa was smart because they didn't give up any of their core key prospects or draft picks. And, other people are saying, I can't believe Ottawa did this. I don't understand. And the fact that, here's one last closing moment here that I want to point out to you guys. Alex Burrows was interviewed today on Sportsnet. And he said that it was important to him that he got traded, but he would not have to worry about finding a new team in July, and he would not have to worry about being traded at next year's trade deadline, because he wanted to make sure his wife and kids were settled wherever he ended up after Vancouver. You can't just wallpaper this stuff on there and just say, oh, well, this is stupid. Alex Burrows has a family that he cares about, and he wants to make sure they're taken care of. And for him to go to Ottawa and get a 2-year contract from Ottawa makes him very happy. He'll play very well for them. And I think it shows that the Ottawa Senators, and I've maligned them in the past, that's a class move. That is a class move by an organization to say, you know what, Alex, we understand you don't want to be a UFA. You don't want to worry about moving at next year's trade deadline. We're right there with you. Here you go. You get a 2-year contract, limited no trade. So if we have to come to you next year, we can. And you give us 10 teams. But for this time, here's your $5 million, $2.5 million per for 2 years. Your wife and kids should be happy. Get a guy in the lineup where he doesn't have to worry about his wife and kids. He'll play better than a guy who's worried about off-ice stuff when he shouldn't be. That does make a difference. That's why when there's speculation a team could move, that team probably doesn't play as well. This all factors in. So I'm sorry. For me, the Senators are a winner. The Senators organization is a winner, and that is a team that, as long as they treat players that way, Burrows will not, let's say Kessler was going to be a free agent this summer. Burrows and Kessler are close. Burrows could go to Kessler and say, I really like the way Ottawa's treating me. I know you've got different teams to choose from, but Ottawa's treating me really well. If we can put the band back together, I think you should come to Ottawa. That plays. That makes a difference. That's why when players are free agents and they're trying to mull things over, players from that organization are sent out to meet with them and talk to them, because it does make a difference. So for the Senators to have made this move to not only acquire Burrows, but to accommodate him for next year, I'm sorry. Qualifying that team as a loser is really short-sighted and not seeing the big picture. Let me know in the comments below why I'm wrong. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching. This trade deadline was slow. Yes. Was it interesting? Absolutely. We have tremendous parity in the NHL right now, and this deadline has just shown it. I'm not disappointed with this deadline at all. I think there's some really interesting moves, and it'll be interesting to see how many of the teams that I put a star under do well, and how many of the teams I put a star under don't, and how many of the teams I put the minus under do great, and how many of the teams I put the minus under just don't. Because none of us know the future. So, thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you all again soon.